This is Andrew Wittstadt, and you were listening to Heavy Board. And we're recording this on September 30th, 2025. My guest today is Heather Ogden. Heather is a writer whose debut novel, The Betrayal, is out this coming October 2025. The Betrayal is a young adult novel following a young girl coming of age in a series of magical realism stories. Heather is young, composing the first drafts of this novel as a teenager and eventually finishing it in her early 20s. And Heather is here today to join us on Heavy Board to tell us all about it. Heather Ogden, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Of course. We start this off with an obligatory question to all artists and writers, which is, and this may be a little different when you're so young here. We'll get into that too. But what was your childhood like? Where did you grow up? What did your parents do? How did these early years start to form Heather in this way?
Uh, so my childhood was rocky in a different sense. When I was in first grade, I got diagnosed with ADHD. And so I grew up very different. I couldn't focus. I wasn't doing well in school. And for someone felt like who needed to get good grades, it was very hard. I struggled academically. I was very much a C student. I bounced from school to school just because I struggled. And on top of that, the medication that I had to take, because at the time, ADHD medication, it was strictly pills.
Hmm.
And I can't eat pills. I can't swallow them. I
You
have
can't
a
swallow
horrible,
pills.
no.
Is it an anxiety thing or
It's a gag reflex.
really?
So I've found that when I try to swallow whole pills, my throat entirely closes up and I can't get it down. I've gotten to the point where I can do tablets if I crush them down small enough. I can manage to swallow the small enough bits, but large pills, and that was the only thing that medication had. And I think it was, when was it? It was like third grade, third, fourth grade. They had come out with a new technology of patches.
Hmm.
There is just a small little patch I stuck on the side of my hip, and it gave me the medication, and I hated it. But I had that for years, and it helped me focus, but it also gave me some behavioral issues that I'm honestly ashamed to kind of admit because it just did not work well in my system at all. I couldn't make friends, I couldn't interact with my peers, and that really made me isolated for most of my childhood. So I ended up just going into imagination and stories, and it really blew off in eighth grade, seventh and eighth grade. I wanted to be a YouTuber, and my mom said that before I posted anything, I had to write a script. I had to write a story and give it to her for her to approve. And I remember after my first script that I handed over to her, she was like, "Not everyone can do this, you know that, right?" And I'm like, "No, you're lying to me. Everyone can write." Uh, but I kept with it, and writing honestly became my escape from reality, from academics, from school, because that has been all my life.
Yeah. Well, I think so. You're 23, I think, right? Is what I was
Yes.
looking up. Okay. And that makes you a Zoomer, right? That makes you a Gen Z.
Yeah, I am a Gen Z.
Gen Z. Okay. I'm millennial, so we talk a lot about that. And of course, it's always in the discourse here, the generational divides, boomers, millennials, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, okay. So that's a different perspective. Millennials, we were the first generation where ADD was a thing. Everybody I know got diagnosed. I got diagnosed with it. I never had it,
Yep.
but I was diagnosed with it. And yeah, it was the pills, right? So I was curious. Yeah, Concerta, Paxil, these what are the other ones that they had you go on? I mean, Adderall's the one everybody talks about, Ritalin, these types of things that
Yeah.
people, even the ones that people abuse in college and stuff, crush up and snort, etc. But yeah, that's what it is. But okay, so you had this issue growing up in school. What did your parents do? If you feel free to share it here. How did that
Uh,
work out?
so my dad's the general contractor. And my mom is an instructional designer. I'm currently working for her, kind of helping with that. I help write the content and just doing all of the small stuff
That's
that
cool.
she doesn't have
That's
time for.
right. Did they work together in that way? Like with
No,
the no. Okay,
no.
that's I was just curious. Yeah. All right, so you have that. And you grew up in Tennessee. You said Memphis area.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
okay, suburbs, school. You said school was a challenge. Was high school the worst part of it, or was it middle school? You
Middle
said,
school
yeah,
was
that
actually the
tends to
worst
be,
part of
yeah.
it. When I was in high school, I actually got off of medication
Okay,
because my mom took the stance of when I was kind of old enough to understood what the medication did to me, if I was old enough and mature enough to kind of make that decision. And high school, I made that final decision that I was going to be off medication, but I had to find ways to kind of cope and deal
right.
with. And a lot of times that was me going up to teachers going, "Hey, today's an off day." I'm not really all here today, so if you see me zoning, not paying attention, it's that. It's not because I'm not interested.
It's interesting. We've had so many writers on here, and we have a couple. There's obviously anybody can try to be a writer, but there's certain types, right? There's certain types, and there are types that did really well in school. We're kind of like type A, getting A's all the time, good at it. Some people are just naturally good at doing that kind of structured stuff. And then there were the type that really struggled too. Like it's interesting how that happens, how they both end up being writers somehow. It's interesting how that plays out. And again, this isn't a podcast, Heather, where we're interested in, answering this for the world. We're just talking, your
Yeah.
thoughts on this, etc. So I was just, yeah, it's interesting how that plays out, with all. Okay, the next question, Heather, we got your early childhood here, which is, and most people, the reason I ask that is because usually we have people that are much more removed from their high school years than you are, but it's still fresh in your memory there. So it's
Yeah.
interesting to see that. We like to ask, when did reading and writing come into your life? Was that something you always did? Was that something you took breaks from? When did that come into your life?
So funny enough, reading I had actually struggled with my entire life. Um, I've never been formally diagnosed, but dyslexia runs in my family. It was just I never got, but I always struggled with reading. I could never read at my level. And I just think it was personally, I just never found the stories that the schools had forced us to kind of read. I never had interest in because they were always really boring. They weren't exciting. So my teachers had to give me a compromise when I was reading. And when they did that, I actually started to enjoy it and be able to read the books that I liked. And funny enough, when I got to, I flourished.
Right.
Recently I've been into a lot of graphic novels and mangas and light novels. That's the genre I've kind of leaned more towards in. But I've always, once I got that kick in middle school of reading, it really hitched off. Um, I remember, I think it was in high school for writing. Uh, I got so worried because I was in a horrible writer's block. I was in it for about a year. And I was worried that writing was just going to become like that hyper-focused phase that we all get, and worried I wasn't going to get back into it. And then afterwards, I managed to get out of that rut and just started on something new and was able to just keep going with it.
That's interesting. So you said you were kind of struck. What were like when you were trying to read? I've done some research on this and I've written some pieces on it. They're on my Substack. Listeners, go read them. Where I taught college for many years, and it was there was a shift between it started in my generation, but then it really hit your generation hard in the kind of pedagogy that they teach. And so I was just curious if that had anything to do with the way they teach reading now in
Mm,
most basic K through 12 schools is absolutely horrendous. They went away from phonics many years ago, 30 years ago, basically, all based off this one woman at Columbia, Lucy Calkins, and it was all just fabricated. It wasn't real. And of course, now we have a whole generation of people that struggle to read and say, "Oh, I wonder why." But I know I was curious if that was the thing. Was like you knew you actually had like stuff appearing backwards to you on there, like the letters would get all jumbled up and stuff, or
like
anything like.
when I would sometimes look at books, like I like the letters and words like were all
Mhm.
got mixed up. And for even now, sometimes I just tell myself it's because I'm reading too fast. It's I'm attempting to read the words and the letters way too fast that I mix up words, mix up letters. And so sometimes it makes it a little hard to read. That's why I like audiobooks so much because I can listen to it.
Yeah. And I have a question about that too, about because I'm a millennial, but I'm a little bit older. I'm 35, oh, 36 now. I just turned 36. And yeah, I'm just fascinated about the youth and stuff. This is just an area of interest for me in terms of publishing, who's buying books, who's reading books, what are they buying, what
Mhm.
are they reading, all of that. So what are your perspective on that? We'll get there eventually. But okay, so you said it was a struggle for you to read. And then what made
Yes.
you kind of come into reading in middle school? Like you said, was it just you found kind of something in these novels and these fantasy books and these
Yeah.
or
So I found the genre that I liked. Fantasy, magical realism, and just it really struck off after that. And then when I discovered mangas when it really kind of hit me. Because I had always thought that like graphic novels and mangas were always kind of like for kids and that it was almost seen as immature to kind of read them. And then I started reading some of those and I go, these are kind of R-rated. They're not really meant for kids, even though they've got pictures associated with them. Someone who's very much a visual learner and I need to see it, it really actually helped me keep with the story.
yeah, yeah. What the question we like to ask off of this too is what were some of the first writers you were enamored with? Or, who are your people that your go-to inspirations or idols in, the world of letters? And anything goes. We like it all on this podcast.
I think the first set of inspiration, I don't know the author's name. It's Japanese, but it's the individual who wrote Classroom of the Elite. It is one of my favorite series to date. Um,
What is
and
that? Is that a
it's a light novel manga. I first read it as a light novel. So, but it is essentially a pseudo modern dystopian world where kids are fighting in a classroom, trying to be the best class, following a slightly sociopathic protagonist.
okay. I said it sounds very Japanese. Yeah. What and
Yes.
anything else? Any big heroes, anything you go to and thinking of like
Uh,
fantasy, and I wanted to ask you about this too with kind of other young writers that started like you did, started writing their first novel as teens and getting it published in their early 20s. I was thinking S.E. Hinton, The Outsiders. I'm thinking Bret Easton Ellis, Less Than Zero. I was just looking, yeah, like any of these people that did it like you're doing it very early in their
yeah.
life, which is unusual. I don't know, any inspiration from those or like those people that they inspire you to keep going into fiction? Like why go into fiction when you
Yes.
struggled with it and all you could find? Yeah, I don't know. What do you?
Yeah. At the beginning of college, ending of high school, my fiance currently got me into a series that I have absolutely loved and actually kept me writing through high or through college. It was the Michael Bay series by Richard Paul Evans.
Okay.
And that is honestly what kind of kicked me to get started for the Lies We Fear series.
Really?
That was a big inspiration to write it as a book.
Okay. Very interesting. And why did you want to do fiction at all? Why did you want to go into creating fiction as somebody who was, yeah, like you said, you were turned off by it early in your life. That's the great thing about literature too, though, is that it can come in waves and it waves and wands. You kind of you'd be really into it for a few years, then you can be like, I got into something else or whatever, video games, whatever it is, and then you kind of can come back to it. It's always there, like these art forms
Yeah.
are always there to enjoy. I'm just curious, why did you think fiction was the best medium for this? As somebody who struggled even, how did you land on that? Be like, well, I should write fiction, something that I've struggled with before, but now I want to literally participate, in the
Yeah. Yeah. So that is actually a really funny story because originally I didn't want to write books. I wanted nothing to do with it because I still feel like I'm horrible at like descriptions and transitions and all of that. I wanted to be a screenwriter. I wanted to write movies, write TV shows, and that's what I went to college for. And then midway through, I went, this industry is tough to get in unless you know people.
Oh
And
yeah.
so then that kind of sparked the idea for me, what if I make the producers come to me? And then I transformed my scripts into books.
The rest was history.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say Cormac McCarthy did that. I think No Country for Old Men was originally a screenplay, and then it wasn't getting picked up, so he just rewrote it as a novel. And it's interesting too, because that's something we're fascinated on this podcast, the differences between the forms, the mediums. We had a screenwriter on recently, who's transitioned to novel writing, Leslie Rasmussen. And she was a staff writer for a bunch of shows. She wrote for Roseanne. She wrote for, NYPD Blue. She wrote for the Wild Thornberrys, that kind of Nickelodeon cartoon back in the day. I don't know if you're too young for that or not.
Hmm.
Yeah. So she was saying the same stuff, right? The industry, that's even harder to do than getting your novel published. And getting your novel published is difficult. And most listeners to this understand that. But like, yeah, the screenwriting is a whole different animal, different techniques, different forms, what's needed in it. It's just interesting how it's always interesting. It's kind of like an instructive exercise to take a script that you wrote and then try to novelize it, put it into a novel form. And of course, most writers, I've dabbled in screenwriting, etc. No success, but it's still like, it is interesting when you play out ideas. And I think I don't know. I'm thinking now of how ideas, why you choose a medium for a certain thing. And this is a constant theme on the podcast. We ask a lot of writers, why would you choose to do a novel for this project instead of a screenplay or a poem or whatever it is, right? Or even as you said, like a graphic novel, what's the form for this story? Because there are all these different forms you can tell stories in now. And it's kind of how that informs how you write it, what you think about, what details need to be included. Because, like you said, description, certain details need to be described. When you're reading something in a book, when you're seeing something visually on a screen, you don't have to write that out into the script. Although it's interesting that Leslie, when she was on, mentioned about the difference between writing for animation on the screen versus writing for, actors, like play style, where she said animation does require you to write out almost like a novel, every little thing that's happening that the animators are going to animate, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how even that within the same medium, there's differences in how the details and if it's a story that calls for great detail, well, then you need it. If it's a story that doesn't, then you don't, kind of thing. And I don't know. I was just curious to, like, how you deal with that. I'm thinking because I just started reading this book literally last night. I ordered it because I've been wanting it for a while, and I came in the mail and I was picking it up last night after my daughter went to bed, and I was like, damn, Thomas Mann is so on point with detail. Everything is so detailed and described and like perfect. You can visualize everything. But then there are other novels where you don't need that. Like it just depends what you're doing. It depends what the story is doing, what is necessary for the characters. Do you need to know
Yeah.
about this character's bank account? Well, if it's part of the story or part of the character, then yeah, like kind of, I don't know, all those kind of cool things that come in here. So I was curious why, fiction came into it. And then the next question off of that, why young adult fiction? Why did you settle on that for this story or just, your career going forward here? Because it's supposed to be a series, right? This is going to the first book in a
Yes.
multiple part series, and we're going to get to that too, your stuff you're working on now.
Yeah.
But I was just curious, why young adult fiction? Why did you feel that was the best way to go for this story or the way that you would thrive in this genre? And I'm curious about that too, because I'm not as familiar with young adult, but from what I hear from the publishing industry, that is it's more cutthroat than a lot of other stuff in publishing right now. Probably because that's one of the few genres that still sells. But like, I don't know. I mean, why young adult fiction? How did you go? Did you stumble into it? Did you set out to do it? Was it just what worked? Anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the term stumbling into it fits really well because I was just
Happens a lot with
writing.
artists. Yeah. Yeah.
I just wrote the book. I just went here, if I'm gonna write a book on this script, I need to here's where I build up and just started writing and then I submitted it and after working through with Morgan James, they're like, yeah, this is a young adult. And I went, okay, not quite sure what young adult is. Let me go do the research on that one.
Right.
Because I
It's
hadn't even heard of young adult until I kind of got into this industry and went, there's a whole category for that.
Yeah. It's mostly for marketing, like it's mostly for how they market it. The
Yeah.
industry doesn't like stuff that doesn't fit neatly into a category that they can say it's like this book, it's like this big hit with, Harry Potter. It's like a big young adult hit. It's like
Yeah.
that. So it's all from, it's for the agents and the press people. That's really why they like to slam books into these categories. Although there's some utility in the academic side of things, but that's my kind of wheelhouse. There's some utility to labeling things. But it's interesting how that happens because it is such a popular genre. And I've heard some things from some authors that have written in it about, and this might have been more the 2013 type era, but it was very cutthroat, very cutthroat. Goodreads, people can sabotage your stuff on Goodreads, etc., with just review bombing and things like that. Very cutthroat. Everybody, because everybody wants their book out. Everybody wants people to read their book. Everybody wants people to buy their book. And
Yeah.
so, and less people are doing it than ever. So it's going to get more and more competitive as we go in that direction. So I was just curious if that had anything to do with it. But like, yeah, that's awesome. Coming of age stories. I wanted to ask you about coming of age stories because they're important not only in young adult novels, but I think they're important in a lot of different storytelling, how we kind of draw to it. But particularly, in your novel, this kind of the realizing the humanity of your parents in particular. I wanted to ask you, why do you think that's such a good topic for fiction and coming of age stories specifically? And, how do you use it in your own writing?
So I like to see it as, I write coming of age because I feel like I'm still coming of age. So it's super easy for me to write on that. And I always, especially growing up, almost saw my parents as like almost perfect individuals. It felt like they couldn't make a mistake. They were doing everything right. But then as I got older, I kind of started seeing, oh, no, they're not perfect. They're human, just like I am. They make mistakes, they falter, they say things they don't mean to. And that really put into my perspective that
Yeah.
when you grow older, things start to shift.
So David Tell, the comedian, he had a bit. This is way back in the early 2000s. I remember him saying where he's like, when you're a little kid, you think your dad's Superman, and then you grow up, you realize he's just a drunk with a cape. Like like it kind of just like you realize
Yeah.
that everybody is just a person. Yeah, and that is such a thing. That is the drama in a coming of age story. These realizations. I can think of specific scenes. I can think of um, realizing that everybody around you who you idolize and still respect but do have these flaws like everybody else does. That is a maturity level of understanding. And I think this happens a lot of the discourse and blah blah blah. We don't have to get too into it, but it just people forget that nobody's going to be 100% perfect. Nobody's going to agree with you 100%. Nobody's going to have 100% your politics, exactly the way
Yeah.
you have them. It's always going to be different. And I think that's something my generation, especially these kind of this, and I don't know. I mean, maybe I didn't plan to ask you about this, but since we're talking about it, there's this thing that I hear all the time. I hear it constantly. Prolonged adolescence, prolonged childhood in terms of being in your 20s. I felt it, my generation felt it, being in college and feeling like you're not actually a full-fledged adult, even though you are on paper, right?
Yeah.
Legally and all of that, you are. Like you said, you can get married, you can sign legal documents and it's binding, it's legally binding, like you can do that now. But there's something that we just feel like we haven't been prepared for, or that we don't know something, or that there's just something is failing us. The education system, the kind of initiation. I was just did a episode, it's up now, listeners, go listen to it with Aaron Berry, and we started talking about initiation rituals and how there aren't really any initiation rituals that like say, oh, you're an adult now, or oh, welcome to the adult. It's just kind of thrown into the wolves in a certain way.
Yeah.
And that's that maturing factor. I mean, this is why it's so rich for fiction, I think, is because when you fictionalize that or you use something like that to fictionalize it, it just adds this realness, this humanity level to it that we as readers and as writers, I think, have to have. Like there just has to be this level of if you don't have that, well then you're not writing a coming of age story. I don't know. I mean, I just read a
Yeah.
bunch of these. I'm read Prayer for Owen Meany by John Irving. That's on the podcast. Go listen to it, listeners. I'm finishing up The Cider House Rules by John Irving for another episode, listeners. That'll be coming shortly, but it's like that those are coming of age stories. And there are two things that you can do with that. And I think John Irving does it really well. You can realize that some people are actually better than you thought they were as you grow up and realize you're like, oh, that guy's just a drunk or whatever. But then as you realize you grow up that actually they're very like caring and good person despite the fact that they're a drunk or whatever. Or you can learn that like actually the people that you thought were being honest lied to you or something, something like
Yeah.
that, where there's these different things and then in an Irving novel, it's so complex, usually a lot of characters. There's both. There's some that are actually better than you thought they were, and some that are worse than you thought they were as the child kind of young man or young girl, grows up. I don't know. I'm rambling now,
Yeah.
but I was just curious. Yeah, coming of age because they're so important. They're so important to literature. They're so important to our culture, to the Western canon, to everything. Really throughout all of history, they're important. But yeah, I was just curious about that and how you would structure something like that on your own right. Because that they're hard to do. I think people are like, oh, coming of age stories, young adult novels. Well, that's easier than doing, a high-minded literary thing. And I said, well, not so fast. To create tension in fiction is not an easy thing to do. It's very difficult. And some people maybe are more naturally inclined to it than others. But yeah, I was just curious how you thought about that or how you tried to structure it. Like, did you take anything from your own life or was it just the characters you were writing through, you discovered that actually, oh, the character is going to do this. I don't know. How do you,
Yeah, I mean, I just really flowed with what the characters would do. I love psychology. I love reading up on it. So I did a lot of psychological research on, I mean, how would people act
right?
if something like this happened to them? And I did usually when writing coming of age stories, there's one thing I remember one of my high school teachers always said, adults forget what it's like to be a kid.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the thing that helped me write coming of age is because I'm still feel like a kid. I still feel like I can very easily grab those memories that I won't be able to when I'm 30, 50, 60, and it'll
Right.
be difficult and I'll have to figure out a new genre.
The teen years are easier to remember than the earlier years. Yeah, as you get older, for sure, just because they were more formative. But yeah, you do tend to forget things. It's interesting because you said that's why I asked about, yeah, S.E. Hinton and Bret Easton Ellis, because Bret Easton Ellis has said something like this similar. His first novel got published when he was 19, and it was a huge hit. But the reason it was a huge hit, and he says this all the time, is that, he was young and he was writing about what, kids these days do. And it wasn't a young, it was a fictionalized version of real events. So it was these rich kids in LA, doing drugs, going to parties, being very careless, and apathetic and kind of thing. They called it the Brat Pack, with these kind of Gen X writers from the 80s. And he just said, yeah, like people were interested in it and they were interested in it because it was, oh, these are what kids do nowadays. And it was like
Yeah.
this kind of like story about almost anthropologically through fiction, giving people a glimpse into like a young rich person's life right now. And it's interesting with social media too, because I wonder if that is a disappearing art because social media allows, we can just watch it happen in real time with most of these people now instead of having like a fictionalized novel about it. I don't know. But I was just, yeah, I'm interested in that because I think there is a level of that the industry doesn't quite know what the youth wants. And they're always trying things. They're always doing things to try and
Mhm.
get, the youth interested or get sales from the youth or have their stuff. But books is one of those things where it's tough to get kids to think they're cool.
Yeah.
Uh, but that's why I asked. Yeah, so like you started this as a novel as a teen, and I wanted to ask, what are young people doing right now? And I know this is a big one. I'm asking you to answer for your entire cohort here, but no, we're not. This isn't that type of podcast. But what are young people even reading books today? Are your friends reading books? Is everyone just listening to audiobooks and say that they, quote, read a book? Like, is this what's happening? What are teens and young 20 somethings doing in regards to literature? How are they consuming it? How are you consuming it? Uh, yeah, we're gonna get anthropological now.
See, all of my friends are engineers, so they don't read.
Isn't that interesting?
Unfortunately, my fiance, who is one, thankfully does read in quotation marks. He is one of those who he has a hard time staring at words on a book for a long time. But he does so much better listening to the audiobooks. So he grabs audiobooks left and right to be able to read them. And I'm very much the same, but I need both.
Are they
I
like
need to listen and read.
are they like nonfiction, fiction,
He's
genre,
fiction
fiction?
all the way.
It's interesting too because you see that too. Like my parents were medical professionals. My father was a surgeon. And it's just interesting how that, usually somebody like an engineer, software engineer or civil engineer, whatever it is, you would think that these are like literate people that would read all the time. If it's whether it's nonfiction, you usually have to for a
Mhm.
certain level of job to keep up with the field. And that just doesn't happen. So I was just curious. Yeah, sales are down. The industry is, I don't want to say free fall, but it is declining and contracting, and there's less resources. So it's just this constant question that nobody really has an answer to is why aren't people buying books? Why aren't people reading books? And I was just curious about like, yeah, what is, my daughter's too young, so I don't know, about the next generation coming up here. But yeah, I was just curious. Yeah, do you see people reading? I don't know, because even in my
Um,
life, I taught college and I would talk to people, and a lot of the people that I worked with, even as other teachers, weren't reading as much as they used to. There were articles in the New York Times recently with professors at Columbia saying, "Oh, I don't read as many books as I used to." I was like, okay, so professors who at Columbia are not reading as much as they used to, that means everybody is not reading as much as they used to, and that means that we are all worse off for it. But I don't know. I was just curious what you're seeing or like what.
yeah, I
Yeah,
don't see nearly as many. Like when I go to the bookstore to go look for books, I see a handful, but I don't see as many as I remember seeing as a kid. And I always attribute that to just the fact that we have access
right.
to all kinds of information that we almost get overloaded in a sense. And because we have that easy access, a click of a few buttons, and we got the synopsis of the book, or we've got, access to it online for free without having to pay, it makes people go the easy way out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true too. I remember even as my youth, I remember going, my parents would take me to bookstores. It was like something we would do. And it was always crowded. It was always crowded. I mean, the cafes, everything was just crowded with people. And now if you go into these, it's much more sparse. There's like you can just have a whole aisle to yourself. That never used to be the case when you're browsing like a bookstore, even like the big chains like Barnes and Noble or something like that. It is. And I mean, obviously, the industry is concerned with it because, I mean, that's how everybody would make their living in the industry. So it is kind of everything's shifting. And I think it is shifting. Like you're right, there's more available, but it's passive entertainment. So reading requires you to be active and like engage with what's there. Use your imagination, use brain power, all of this stuff. You can't just sit there and stare and not have to think about anything. It requires you to think about things and interpret and all of that. I mean, even just to process the words, you're using like brain power, etc. And I wonder, yeah, because it is going towards like a more passive entertainment world. Maybe that's just
Yeah.
the simple explanation for why it's all down. But yeah, I don't want to get bogged down on that. I wanted to ask you about magic. Oh, no, please go on if you.
No,
No, you're. Oh, I
I'm
wanted
good.
I wanted to ask you about magical realism. Because I think most people that are into literature and art really like magical realism. Uh, so I want to ask, what is it about magical realism that intrigues us as readers and lovers of story? Or, what does it intrigue in you, magical realism?
Yeah, so I have always liked the idea that the world is like ours, but a little different. The idea that maybe our world could have magic. We're just not set up for it. And that idea kind of pierces just a little to make it seem more believable almost.
Yeah.
To where if stars were just aligned in a different proportion, we could have magic. We could have these fantastical things, which in my head makes it a lot easier to kind of disappear into fiction when it's magical realism because it's almost close to reality, but not quite.
Uh, Fairy tales, fables,
Yes.
any of that influence this or
Not really influenced, but I do enjoy reading them. Some of my favorites are the original Grimm fairy tales.
yeah,
I loved the unfortunate dark nature of them. It makes them seem so much more creepy.
yeah, yeah. They're much more sparse too when you go back and read those old ones. I have a leather bound edition of the Grimms right here, yeah, that I plan to read to my daughter when she's old enough. But yeah, I was just curious because magical realism is it's so intriguing because it's that little hint. I think somebody like Stephen King does this very well. I think even you could go to literary side. I think somebody like Toni Morrison uh did this very, very well in a high literary style, used magical realism in this incredible way. Thinking of books like Beloved, I'm thinking of things like that where there's just this the ghosts, right? If you have a ghost in your story, well, that's technically now you're doing magical realism. Now you're doing
Yeah.
this kind of you're bending over into that. So Beloved with the ghost, and again, I'm sorry I'm spoiling that book for those that didn't read it, but you should have read it if you're interested in literature and you're listening to this podcast. You should go read it. But yeah, I don't know. There's something about the magic. And you don't want it to go too far because if you go too far, then you're in the fantasy realm, right? Then you're dragons and blah blah blah. But you could have a little dragon, you could have a little magic, you could have a little. I'm thinking even of like the first season of True Detective and stuff. There was a hint, the slightest little bit of hint with the Yellow King references and things like that, that are just the slightest hint that this could be a little bit magical realism. And of course, it wasn't, right? That was just a straight, fictional
Yeah.
drama story. But there was just a hint of it that, like, oh, this could get darker or deeper than you thought.
Yeah.
And that is just such an intriguing concept. That is like, I don't know, were you a Harry Potter kid? I mean, I don't know if it's
Yes.
the same for millennials and Gen Z, because I was millennials and like it was so important. So when did you first discover like Harry Potter and some of these other kind of
Oh,
fantasy novels?
I was in middle school.
Now, I mean, by the time you were, it was everywhere when you were
Yeah.
growing up. When I was growing up, it was just coming out. The movies didn't
hmm
exist yet. So it was like, again, it doesn't happen anymore. There were midnight releases of those books, and people would wait in line to get the latest edition, and they would be dressed up. I did it a few times when I was older in high school, getting those last couple books. Like it was just like that doesn't happen anymore. Like that
Yeah.
does not happen. I don't care how popular. Nobody was doing that for the Hunger Games. Nobody was doing that for all these other kind of ones that have come after. All right.
Yeah.
Twilight was close. Yeah, Twilight did have some of that, but it was kind of around the same time, a little bit after Harry Potter, but still it was like the next one after Harry Potter. And it just doesn't happen. So like there is less fandom even, but somehow more fandom than ever. But it's all like this kind of video, movies, TV
hmm
shows, merchandise. It isn't the books necessarily like it used to be. So just curious, yeah, how big Harry Potter was when it came into your life, all of that.
Yeah, it was really big. Um, there was a bit of time that I was anti Harry Potter mainly because it was popular
Right.
and I didn't want to feel like following the trend, but eventually I did fall into the trend.
Yeah. There's a lot of that now too, with because it is the most popular young adult, fantasy series ever written, that people would just say that they don't like it because it differentiates you from the masses in some way, of oh, well, I'm better than that, right? Or
Yeah.
I don't waste my time with that. And I'm just I rail against that on this podcast, but yeah, it's just interesting how impactful that story is, how important it is to the culture, and what it's done to every writer that came after it. Um, I think it's just undeniable at this point. And Harry Potter, I mean, they're remaking it all now. That's clearly a cash grab, but still, it's just I don't know what it was about this, but I talked to this about with another author I had on recently because she said the same thing. She's about my age that Harry Potter was very influential. And I was just thinking, yeah, like how were we all gripped by this? Why were we all gripped by this story? I don't know that. And I think it has something to do with the magical realism. It has something to do with the kind of boarding school coming of age stuff. It has something to do with the hero's journey, good versus evil, etc. There's something about it. It has all the elements that you would love in a story, but for some reason, maybe it was just the marketing. Everybody loves this more than any other young adult fantasy book or any other fantasy novel series, etc., etc. I've read Game of Thrones. I've read, these other ones. They're good. Yeah, they're not Harry Potter. Yeah, it is. It is
Yeah.
kind of. It's. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why. I was just curious. And I wanted to ask you about love stories, particularly the conflict of love, like, as a device for writing. How do you like to use that in your writing, or, how did you use it in this book, or how, what do you find intriguing about it in books that you like, etc. Because that's another one of those, I think, love story, romance stories, love triangles. Not only are they just like devices for writing, they are the thing that draws you in.
Yeah, yeah. From a personal standpoint, I am not a huge fan of romance writing. Um, Especially if it's like between two specific characters. I have always, and I take this approach in The Lies We Fear, I like it to be almost insinuated, but open enough to where if people wanted to ship some of other two characters together that I didn't intend to, I don't want to be the person to stop that. I mean, that's their creative expression, and for me, having authors and nothing against them, if it's their writing, they can do what they want. But I prefer if I like someone else in the book with a different character. I want to be able to imagine and have enough kind of interactions where it could be feasible and have people write stories and, you know, off of my work.
Yeah. Were you a fan of like Jane Austen or Edith Wharton or any of the great kind of love
Yeah.
story novelists? I love Wharton, and I think she uses this brilliantly in terms of craft and technique as well, in terms of setting up tragedies through a love triangle or even just a simple, relationship. That there's something that, I mean, this is soap opera, right? I mean, with soap operas are relationship drama essentially, right? Like kind of gossip and who slept with who cheated on who, et cetera, et
Hmm.
cetera. That is an automatic tension builder, drama builder for a writer, for a creative, for people that just like entertainment and want to watch it. That is the case. So I was just curious how you thought about that with, because it's a thing in young adult fiction too. Most of the main characters, there's a love interest,
Oh
and
yeah.
it flows throughout even a series that it goes throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, like in the betrayal, I get that started, but throughout the series there is kind of subtlety to that interaction that I imagine is between two of the characters. I mean, one is loosely based on me, the other is loosely based on my fiance. So it's easy for me to imagine them together. But again, I don't want to stop individuals if they want to ship Angelette with someone else or ship who I imagined the romantic interest being with a different character. I don't want to be the one to stop that creative freedom.
In terms of like fan fiction or
Yeah,
have you had people? Well, I guess the book isn't out yet, but I was just
yeah,
yeah, the fan fiction one's another one that I'm not familiar with, but I know it's huge.
yeah.
Um, but that's all over subreddits, etc. I think even 50 Shades of Grey was started as fan fiction.
Yes.
Uh, okay, I wanted to ask you about this because I kept hearing this. What is Teentober?
Teen Tober? I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Is that like some like, I don't know, national reading event or something or
Teentober 2025. It's a nationwide celebration hosted by libraries to celebrate teens and promote year-round teen services.
huh, teen services? What the hell is that? Were those they didn't have any of this when I was growing up. So I was just
Yeah, I mean, I
curious.
first heard of this with my PR and I was like, okay,
Yeah,
good.
interesting, interesting. Uh The next question like that, we like to get into the publishing here. Why did you choose to go out publishing the way you did?
Um, so I'd like to say that I didn't choose Morgan James. Morgan James kind of chose me. I was in senior year of college. It was around this time I was starting to write The Lies We Fear, and I was interested to see how the publishing industry would look at it. I got a friend of my mother's.
If you're hearing this, it's because you are listening to the free public feed of Heavy Board. To get complete, uncensored, uninterrupted, full access to this podcast, become a subscriber at patreon.com/heavyboard. That's right, Heavy Board is made possible by subscribers like you. For less than 1 cup of coffee per month, you will receive private access to uncensored, full-length episodes, Jerk Shop, heavy bonus content, subscribers-only AMA episodes, bonus extended interviews, and more. Come join the conversation today at patreon.com/heavyboard.
To connect me with the founder of Morgan James. And so we just got to chatting, and curiously, I sent him the first 4 chapters. I went, how does this look? Do you think it's submission material? I wasn't even asking. I was just wanting advice to see if it was good, if there was anything I needed to switch up, because I knew that there was stuff I needed to change about it. And within a few days, he had emailed me back and said, Heather, this is amazing. I'm going to submit it to the board on your behalf. What's your address? And I remember I was in such shock that I probably stood there at the email for about an hour,
Yeah.
just going, I'm sorry, what? It's good enough to submit. And I had a fit after that.
What, from my understanding of Morgan James, is kind of what they call like a hybrid publisher, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's when you're not the first guest we've had on from that's had that used Morgan James, and I'm curious about this, yes, because there are so many options. This is why we ask about it
Yeah.
because we've had people that self-publish through KDP. We've had people that have big five deals with the big five presses. We've had people that, yeah, like do something different or maybe just try to self-release on a Substack. So I'm just curious, and we like to ask when authors come on, how that journey came to be, why you went this way. There's so many options available. Why not just KDP it? Why not try to do the big fives? I was just curious. I was just curious, and I know it's the first book. And again, given your age and when you wrote this, I mean, I had no idea where you would send something when I was 23. So, I mean, like, stuff like that, it's kind of, yeah, I was just curious how you came to that. You said, okay, so it was this kind of connection you had, and you end up
Yeah.
going with that. How was that? How was the process of
Process
publishing?
was absolutely amazing. Um, they were super communicative. I loved them. Uh, I mean, it was super easy. I had some timelines I had to stick to of like when I needed to get drafts in and whatnot and approve of things. And even now, I had a chat earlier this week to talk about the future series because I was like, wouldn't it be nice to have the rest of the books on a little bit of a quicker schedule? And he was like, yep, that's absolutely doable. So,
Yeah. And I was curious, we're also be going off of that. We're curious about the marketing. Did they help you do any marketing? Are you on your
no.
own with the marketing?
I am on my own with the
Yeah.
marketing. They handle the printing and the putting it in the bookstores, which is what I
Right.
really needed help with.
Which is a nightmare. Yeah. If you're doing that on your own, it's a nightmare. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I really like, I think probably one of my favorite things with Morgan James is I keep the rights
Right.
to the book.
Is most, yeah, hybrid.
And it's been amazing knowing that I can also write like the script and I be in charge of when the
Or you
movie
could
comes
sell
out
them, yeah, if you wanted. Yeah.
and just knowing that I can do whatever I want with it makes me feel a lot more confident in my
Right.
writing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's interesting. We asked that too because, I have friends that have had deals with Big Five, HarperCollins, stuff like that. Get very little marketing even from that. So, even if you'd go through the mainstream kind of Big Five presses or even an indie press, but people know with indie presses you're not getting any marketing. They don't have a budget for it.
Yeah.
But with those big presses, it's less than it ever was before. It was less than it's ever been. My friend, she was setting up her own events. She was setting up her own marketing things, like her own podcast appearances. This kind of it. They gave her a PR person through the press, but they were more focused on getting a review in the Times or something instead. But that doesn't really sell books like it used to. Like
Yeah.
the more important thing is getting you on podcasts and getting your name and face out there, especially if it's a first book. It's not like the old ways. The world has changed and the publishing is really not keeping up with it. So that's why we're curious about it. We like to hear every author's way they did it, how they chose to go about it. Do you think for the next ones you're going to do the same thing? Are you waiting to see if you
Um,
can?
so for the rest of the series, I do plan on sticking with Morgan James, but unfortunately for the next series that I have planned, I will probably go elsewhere. It's not a relationship issue. It's absolutely not that. They are a clean fiction, clean publishing, so there's no cursing, there's no profanity at all. And with the next book,
Really?
it's not a lot. But there's some words that are in there for purpose that are profanity.
I didn't
But I
realize
need
that.
them in there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't
it
realize that.
is. Yeah, I had to remove like dams and
Even in dialogue.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I couldn't even have yeah. I think it was just dam.
Wow.
I couldn't have that in
Shit.
any.
Damn gets you a PG rating now on movies. So it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, there it is. It's your first encounter, Heather, with corporate art. You want to make your art and you want people to see it. Nobody wants to put on a play that nobody sees. You want people to engage with it.
Yeah.
But you're also dealing with a distributor who has preferences and a board and shareholders and people that they can't just do whatever. Uh, and people
Yeah.
lament that. But of course, there's different reasons for censorship. There's different reasons for editing, etc., removal of scenes. Um, and I've heard some stories, yeah, even from the big five presses where people were saying they've had these kind of not arguments, but hashing it out with editors because they want to remove this scene because it's too graphic or something. And then you feel like it's like, okay, well, who are we removing this for? We're removing this for a hypothetical reader that we may or may not read it and be offended. Like, well, what are we
Yeah.
doing here? I think that's hurt the industry too, is nobody wants to be the one that makes a mistake like that and then gets blamed, right? If there's a huge backlash to this graphic sex scene or something,
Yeah.
well, the publisher's going to have to deal with the fallout of that, and they don't want to. So I understand that, but yeah, it's this thing that artists are always bumping up against. You're bumping up against the people that are willing to distribute it and market it for you. Your individual vision, and then you have to put it through the kind of corporate art thing. If you want people to read it, obviously you could be, if you're a purist, you could be KDP or something, or you could put it out on Substack
Mhm.
and sure. But like I said, most people don't want to put on a play that nobody sees, right? Okay. They
Yeah.
want, even if they hate it, you want them to see it. All right. Even if they hate it and write nasty things about it, at least they saw it, and your work
Yeah.
wasn't in vain.
Yeah.
So
And
it's just,
thankfully for this one, it wasn't too difficult for me. I didn't have like any big profanities. It was like
right.
two two dams and a what the hell.
Dang. What the
So
hell?
it was just occasionally like going, what the dash?
Dang. I know. I'm shit.
Yeah.
Even in Shrek, they say hell and damn. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's crazy.
But now with the second book and further on, I know to be a lot more mindful
Yeah.
to just not put those. So I save myself time on having to go back through and control F.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and then we like to ask, I know it's just your book's about to roll out here in the next week, but and this will be out literally like a week delayed or so, like a week or two delayed. So it will be out when your book's out, and we'll link it below and all
Okay.
that good stuff for people. But like it's like I don't know, any marketing plans, anything like that. I know it's tough when you're doing it on your own, or you have press. So you went through PR and
Yeah.
you did that on your own, right? You went out and hired PR.
Yes. So I am with PR by the book,
Right.
and they're handling podcasts, getting it out to reviewers. They even have a selection of book talkers. that they're getting it to review, and I know that there is a handful that are reviewing it.
Yeah, that's interesting too, how they approach the marketing.
Oh yeah, because I
But
I had tried to start it on my own, and then I got so overwhelmed by
it is
everything that I had to do, and I just sat here and was like, I just want to write a book. That's all I want to do. I could care
right.
less about talking to people, about speaking, about I just want to sit in the room
S-
alone and just type.
Social media posts.
Yeah.
It's yeah. And my friend who got to deal with a big five, she's been on the podcast, go listen to episode listeners. She's gonna come back eventually too. We're gonna do some books together. But it's she said this. She said her next one, she thinks she's going to do hire an outside PR on top of whatever, the publisher is doing, just because it gave her more control. It gave her a little bit more, somebody's out there working for you, even though you're paying them. I mean, that's, people aren't going to work for free. You
Yeah.
gotta do it yourself, especially if you're unknown. If you don't have a name and reputation, you're not one of these big grandfathered in writers from, before the publishing industry has been this kind of cutthroat thing, you know, from 20 years ago. Like I mentioned, John Irving, well, okay, he doesn't have to worry about it. He's grandfathered in. But like, everybody else, you have to do your own PR. And if you do that yourself, or you have to hire somebody to do it. There was even the guy, he self-published it. I think it was called I Hate the Internet, this novel. Self-published it, and he said he self-published it because, he'd had other books published on indie presses, big presses, blah, blah, blah. But he said he couldn't get anybody to publish it. So he just went and did KDP. And he said what he noticed was that he's like, okay, I need a really good publicist. Like, if I'm going to do this seriously and do KDP, where otherwise, most people that do KDP, they don't do any marketing. So it just, nobody sees it because it's just an obscurity, just a file on an Amazon server somewhere.
Mhm.
Uh, so he was like, okay, the big bulk of what you spend has to be PR. He said he took out a loan for 25 grand to buy one of the best PR people in the business, and it worked. It worked. So you have to put that kind of money up front, listeners, if you want to have like, 100,000 copies sold or something, or even more than that. You got to shell out big bucks. This is why the big publishers don't do it, because they don't want to spend 25 grand on a book that's going to sell 250 copies or 1,000 copies, because you're not making that money back. So it's a business decision, a corporate art decision. And I get that, you can't blame them for that. They're a business, but it's like, yeah, that's the huge part of it. So if I mean, at least you're doing that. I had a guest on too that said, great line, shout out to A.O. Wagner, where he said, you can write books or you can market books. You can't do both at the same time. Like it
Yeah.
just kind of, it's going to take away your time. It's going to take away your ability to write more because you're constantly doing press things or you're constantly trying to hustle. We've had people sell out of trunks of cars. I've had guests on here that have told us they've just been, 50-mile radius from their house, driving to bookstores and libraries out of the trunk of their car. Hey, I have this book that, like I self-published. Would you carry it in your store kind of thing? Like it literally, it's that level right now,
Yeah.
of getting your book out there. So there's good things and there's bad things. The good thing is it's easier than ever to get your work out. The bad news is it's harder than ever to get people to actually look at it,
Oh
because it's
yeah.
just on the ocean of content on this timeline that everybody scrolls.
Oh yeah, and
So
especially for me, I remember I even to this day, I'm not a huge fan of social media. I don't really like it. It's too bogged down these days. And so when I hired PR by the book, I was like, warning, I haven't had social media for 10 years as a Gen Z.
oh, so you're completely off. You're completely
I
out.
was off until I had to do marketing, and then I was
Okay,
like, well, time to boot
right.
back up the old Instagram that I haven't used in 9 years.
Is that so? You're unusual then. Is that a normal thing for
No,
your? Yeah, I would say you're like the only one
not
of
at
your
all.
peers. Yeah,
I am a dime a dozen. Um, I just don't like it. It just feels too much.
it's aggressive. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And
aggressive.
I'm very sensitive.
It's invasive too.
And I just like I don't want to put everything out there. I'd like to keep some of my life private and some of it public.
Right. There's an intimacy to it too that I think people don't, they gloss over Why do these people get obsessive relationships? They call it parasocial. Why? Well, because it's much more intimate than people pretend it is. Like it's you're confessing things even that you wouldn't confess to anybody else to millions of people online. I mean, it's this kind of it's a very strange dynamic, and I think it can make people out of very fearful too. Um, if you're, I do say, uh, if you're going to be in public, if you're going to be doing things in public, that's just part of it. That's just people are going to be saying things about it. They're going to criticize it. They're going to not even criticize it. They'll criticize you for something
Yeah.
that they completely fabricated. It's not true. It's not real, but they made it up, and now it's everybody's resharing it. It's just that is a hard thing to deal with, and it makes you do feel like the world is collapsing. I don't know if you've avoided it. You probably haven't. I've been piled on a few times. There are things that I say on this show and stuff that get me piled on occasionally, and it's not fun. It's not pleasant. Uh, but it is like I've heard people even refer to this as like a form of rape. Like when you're like getting piled on online, where they're just digging into everything, like you feel so violated, like this kind of way, a kind of online spectral rape or something, where it feels that way where
Yeah.
like your world is collapsing around you, but it isn't. It's just this little stupid thing online that'll probably blow over in like 24 hours and just don't look at it. But like it is like
Yeah.
people are very flippant about that too. They'll, oh, have a thick skin. And then people always have, okay, how thick is yours, motherfucker? How thick is your skin? Okay. You're gonna deal with that. And then people, oh, don't care, don't care. I'm like, no, that's not a normal reaction to having thousands of people, hate you publicly. That is not a normal reaction. A normal reaction to that is to be devastated and to sink into yourself and to
Yeah.
think your world is coming to an end and have a mental breakdown, as people have had, journalists have had, because they put out an article and people don't like it or they don't agree with it or whatever. They'll have days long mental breakdowns where they're literally destroying their career without, if they just ignored it, it would be better. But still, it's like, that's hard to do. It's hard to ignore it when you have people publicly spouting lies about you, et cetera, et cetera. So I get that.
Yeah.
But it is kind of unfortunately the world we live in now, where people get to say whatever they want immediately, immediately after you put it out there. And what can you do about that? But yeah, that's a rough world. It's rough. So we ask that because it
Yeah.
is important to writers now. You have to play the social media game. You have to play these games now. And it's not easy to play these games.
Yeah.
It's not easy at all. So I mean, it's just we're just curious about that because I think writers do struggle with that. You're not the only one. I think all of us do. Um, yeah, I don't know how. I wish I could give better advice to listeners out there, etc., but I can't. So it's just that's what it is. Heather, we like to ask a couple craft questions here. These last couple questions here are all about how you like to do it, how you like to do your writing, etc., etc., what you get out of it. We like to ask, what is your writing routine like? How do you like to do it?
So I am all over the place when I write. I honestly cannot use my first book as an example of that routine because that was made completely outside of my routine. When David had told me he was going to submit it, I went into a flurry and proceeded to write 34 chapters within a single week.
Hmm.
And because I knew I had to get it done because if I wasn't and I got rejected, I was not going to be picking up a tablet. I was going to be writing again for quite some time. But usually I like to try to sit somewhere comfortable because I don't necessarily always feel comfortable at my desk because this is where I work. And so
Right.
I usually get like a pad or something and like sit on my bed or on the couch and just write away while I have noise or YouTube or Hulu or Netflix or something playing in the background.
You like having background noise with it?
Yes, I need to have stuff. I can't work in quiet.
Yeah. And what do? You like to type? Do you like to write, handwrite? What do you like to do for
I
your?
like to type, and I personally specifically like to use Google Docs. I know a lot of people don't, and that's a lot of controversy of what to use. I just like the ease of being able to go offline and still be able to write and not have to pay a subscription service.
Right. Yeah, they're the only issue with the free Google Docs, and when I was teaching, every students would use that because it was free, even though they got free Microsoft subscriptions through their being a student at the school, but they don't
Yeah.
know that. But yeah, it's you just get a little less feature with Google Docs,
Yeah.
and because it's like an online thing, sometimes when you're writing novels, you're getting to page 300, 400, 500 in the draft, it can start crashing when you start getting 300, 400, 500 pages in because most people
Yeah.
aren't writing that long of Google Docs. But yeah, so I see that takes a while to load sometimes, and then sometimes it'll get stuck. But whatever. I have both. I use Google Docs and I use Word. Word just because that's what I was my whole life. That was the only word processor for a while, and that's just what I learned how to use. So I just stick with it. But I like Google Docs for
Yeah.
the same reason as you said. I can, although with my Microsoft subscription now, with like the 365 that they do or the 360 Microsoft subscription, you can do basically the same thing, but you have to pay for it. So you can get it
Yeah.
on all your devices anytime. You can save it into their cloud, blah, 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 and pull it out, blah, blah, blah. But you got to pay for it as opposed to Google
Yeah.
Docs. So that's interesting. Do you like to do outlines? Do you like to do notes? How does it start to craft? We like to know how these kind of like, is it just an idea, like a note you jot down and then that expands? Do you have a bunch of notes that when you sit down, you start assembling little pieces, like a puzzle? I mean, how do
Yeah.
you like to do this? Yeah.
Yeah. So for The Lies We Fear, I knew when I was writing the book, I had to write an outline. Usually when I write
Yeah.
scripts, I don't usually have an outline because
Really?
I don't want to limit myself to how short or long it needs to be. If I come up with an idea that would fit well in the story for a script, I want to keep going with it. But I knew if I did that with a book, I was never going to end it. And I couldn't have this be a never-ending book series. It needed to have a beginning and an end. So before I ever started writing the series, I wrote an outline for the entire series.
Right.
And then in that outline, I designated, okay, this section is going to be book one. This section is going to be book two, which is now turned into two and three.
hmm
And then this section is now going to be book four.
Well, how detailed was this outline? Was this just like a couple of points or like
No,
streams of
this
dialogue, every little beat on the thing? Yeah.
very, very detailed. I even got so detailed as to first and second book, and now third. I have chapters with individual, like, here is every little detail that is going to
Right.
happen in the book. And all I need to do is essentially flow it out more, add the transitions, the descriptions, certain dialogues.
Yeah, that's interesting. We usually have the opposite where we have people that would do like screenplays, which are so much more structured. You'd think usually it's more helpful to have an outline for something like that where you have to squeeze it in 90, 120 pages. Like that's all you got. And
Yeah.
like at least for a spec script, if you're a working screenwriter, it goes out the window, of course. But for those of us that are writing spec scripts trying to break in, 90, 120 pages max. So then if you have this story, like an epic story, like a Saving Private Ryan style story, well, I'm sure that script was over 200 pages. Okay, like nobody's looking at a spec script that is that long.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. But and you have to be more efficient because you don't have all the freedom, you don't have all this time to leisurely like, explore the character and the world building, blah blah. You have to go right to it. Here's the world, here's the visuals, blah blah. So I don't know. It's interesting how that happens. But yeah, they always say there's different. I like to experiment with it. I like to do some outlines when I feel like, oh, I'll do an outline. And sometimes I just feel like I'll fucking outline. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to roll with whatever's coming into the head. And I think both work and both are beneficial. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't worry about limiting yourself. Give the outline because that's like a starting point. You're at the starting
Yeah.
line with an outline, even a little bit beyond the starting line because now you have the outline. If something comes up, throw it in there, ride it out anyway, even though you have the outline. You're just not like, but I mean, I don't know, everybody's different. So I don't know if you had something like that, like when you write the outline, like I have to stick to this outline, or you let
Yeah.
yourself bring things in, change the outline in the process because it is this constant changing all the time when you're creating. You never quite know where it's going to lead. You get an idea,
Yeah.
it takes off. Are you
Yeah,
just
absolutely. I use the outline when I write for the specific chapters is kind of when those like far ideas come in. That
Hmm.
first chapter, I never intended to have the picture frame crack happen. That came in during the outline and then during the writing as well. I was like, oh my
Right.
gosh, light
Yeah.
bulb moment, good foreshadowing.
It's, it's interesting because we talk about this all the time. It's a constant theme on the podcast here because we're writing and book podcasts. We like this kind of stuff, but it is, I've heard people describe it, and I think of it myself this way, that sometimes writing and creating is more discovering than inventing, right?
Yeah,
But it's also both. So it's because you're working within this established framework, language, English language. There's only 26 characters. They
yep,
can only do, there's only so many words. But then it's about how you structure it, how you take your spin on this type of stuff. So, I mean, it really is kind of discovering. And that's the most fun part about it, really, is like one little idea you had suddenly connects all these three or four other ideas that you already wrote, and then you go back for the next draft, and it all comes out even better and more
yep,
connected, and the flow is perfect, and it is this kind of process, and the outline. The first draft, these are just the beginnings of the process. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. A lot of people like that the first draft is it. You write the first draft.
yeah,
Well, I wrote a novel. It's like, well, yeah, technically you did, but like, that's the easy part is like just following your imagination, and like
yeah,
that's like the hard part is making that good or perfecting it or making it worth everybody else's time to read it. It's nobody wants
yeah,
just like a diarrhea of ideas. They want it connected. They want it to be meaningful. They want to have some characters that they can follow and care about. Like you have to structure that. And I mean, this is something we talk about all the time. I see it all the time now where people just don't do that. You see it in all writing. You see it in ad copy, marketing. You see it in film writing, where they're just not creating the detail or the backstory or the thing that would make you care deeply about this character and want to follow them on like, a 10-hour series or something, whatever it is. And it hurts. I mean, this is why people say, "Oh, there's so much bad content." Well, yeah, there is because I mean, one, because they're cranking it out, but two, it's because they're cranking it out, they don't even have the time to do these rewrites and stuff like that on some of these dialogues. So you get
yeah,
this terrible monologue in this TV show on Netflix. You're like, how the hell did this get through a writer's room? Like, how the hell do they have five people looking at this and think, okay, that's good? Like, are you kidding me? I remember
yeah.
watching, I'm going to do this, I'm planning on this as a preview for listeners. I want to cover the Modern Family um, sitcom for that as cultural marker, basically, in the culture and all of that. And I remember seeing this thing in the writer's room as I was preparing. I'm slowly preparing for that. And the writers were talking about they did this thing where they were trying to write a joke, and they were talking about how Cam and Mitch and the gay couple with their daughter, the daughter was young and they
Yep.
didn't get any sleep. And the joke was, they're exhausted and they're doing the confessional. They're like, "Oh, I got 6 minutes of sleep last night." I think like that was the line they came up with. And the head writer kind of sat there and he leaned back. He said, "Okay." He's like, 6 seconds of sleep. He's like, "It's good. It's funny." He's like, "But it's not great." Like that's what he would like said to like the person that was pitching it. And he was just like, we need to be even funnier than that. And I feel like that was from a time when it was like a network TV show where you had this kind of time to
Hmm.
rework something, and now they're cranking out series to the point where you don't even have the time to sit there and go, "Huh, could we do better than that line right here? Is that line the best we could do? Is that
Yeah.
the funniest thing we could do in that situation? Is it the best for the character, the situation, the way we're going to have it come back in the end?" Like, I don't know, things like that, these little details. That's why I ask about outlines and all this stuff, because that's the magic. That is the real work there. These little details, these little holding yourself to a standard and then trying to achieve it. It really is. And outlines, I think, help you do that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I was curious. Yeah, I'd like to hear about that and how any kind of designated time that you do in terms of like an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon for your writing routine, anything you like to
No,
do.
I don't
No.
have specific times just because my life is always so chaotic. There are some weeks that every single day I will be up till 3, 4 a.m. and then go,
Oh,
I've got work at 10 a.m. in the morning. I gotta get up. And then there are other times I'm going to bed at 7, I'm tired. So it's very much
is it just
up and
insomnia
down.
or is it just like that college
Um,
student, like, who cares
I think
about
it's
sleep? I'm
college
23.
student
Yeah. Yeah.
ADHD. Just my brain just refuses to shut off at night.
Yeah.
And it's a you're awake, you're going to think of the most horrible thing you have ever done in your life for the next 2 hours.
Yeah.
Just go, why?
Because obviously hearing that now, I was thinking, I was like, oh my God, I would never be able to survive with that. But I was like, yeah, when I was 23, I was not concerned with when I went to bed. Yeah, that's for
Yeah.
sure. But now if I'm not in bed by like 10:30, 11, I will just fall asleep. It's kind of thing. I'm in that position now. But yeah, just curious how that works out. Everybody has their own way they like to do it.
Hmm.
Um, Okay, another question we like to ask everybody, and we don't need specific numbers or anything like that, or even if you don't want to give out, your employer, all that, please, you don't have to. We like to ask, how do you make a living? Do you make any money off the literature? I guess for that one, the book isn't out yet, so we don't know
Yeah.
yet. But we like to ask this, and we ask this because, it's tough out there for writers, and you usually have to have a day job, and we like to dissolve the illusion that, just because you won a National Book Award does not mean you're a millionaire and don't have to work. All those people have day jobs usually. Some don't, but that's the top 1%. So we're just asking, yeah, how do you make a living? How do you make a living as a writer?
Um, so I am a instructional designer. I work for my mother, helping her make training courses for companies during the day. I use most of that money to pay off student loans.
Right. Oh, well, I guess, yeah, are you still living at home at this point? Like a kind of,
I have moved in with my fiance.
oh,
He has
nice.
been
Okay,
lucky
yeah.
enough
Right.
to buy a house in this economy.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay. So you're
I am
already
cur
there.
Yep. I'm living with him currently, and we have arrangements made up so I can use most of my paycheck that I get towards the student loans to get them off
Right.
because those stress me out to high heaven.
Yeah, and it's good, especially when you're young like this, trying to get your life together, get them down as soon as you can, and just be done with it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good way to go about it. So okay,
Yeah.
that's good. That's good, because I think that's we all have to have data. We all. God, I wish I could just podcast for a living. I wish, but it's not there yet. Yeah, I'd love to do it the
Yeah.
full time, but it's has to, I have to have a day job. I have to take care of my kids. I have to, there's this
Yeah.
stuff that happens. And yeah, I'd love to do it for a living, but it's rough out there. So we like to ask that for everybody. Just, even when you get a big five deal, you're not set for life. I mean, not
Yeah.
anymore. Maybe, everybody hears about the top, very rare 1% of 1% deal where I'm thinking, or even controversy, a big controversy a few years ago. I'm thinking of the American Dirt thing. People were pissed and they said it was about politics, but it was really about that she got a seven-figure book deal. That's what it was about. And people were pissed that
Hmm.
this woman got a very rare, very rich book deal for this novel, and they were pissed off that they didn't get it, you know. And that's part of it as well, right? Not everybody gets to do this, which makes it, makes it more cutthroat, makes it more challenging, makes it
Yeah.
harder. You're going to be put through the fucking ringer here if you're going to try and do this.
Oh yeah.
I've had even somebody like Ta-Nehisi Coates has said publicly, like, it's going to take 10 years. So just be prepared for that. It's going to take you 10 years to get anywhere close to making like a basic middle class living off of this. And if you get through that, maybe you'll make it, maybe you won't, because it's not even a guarantee after that. So it's a
Yeah.
matter of it's a hustle. It's a hustle. So everybody out there listening knows that it's a hustle. And yeah, we're just curious how each writer that comes on when we get them here as an opportunity to ask. So that's great. And we don't know about the literature yet, but we will soon. So when you come back, we'll ask it again and we'll see how that went. Because it's curious, I mean, the book sales are abysmal. That Harper Collins, or no, it wasn't even Harper. It was Penguin Random House, that antitrust case that got shut down by the government here a few years ago, where Simon and Schuster was trying to buy Penguin Random House, and it would have made them control something like 60-70% of the market. The government shut it down, wouldn't let them merge. But because they had to go to court over this antitrust suit, all the sales numbers were released publicly in terms of how much they're making, how much they're selling off of each book here. And I think the average book, first time author, sells less than 250 copies. And that is with all of the power, all of the
Yeah.
marketing, all of the distribution of the biggest presses in the world. And you will get maybe 250 copies. off a
Yeah.
first time book, maybe. So if you're anywhere above that, Heather, you are a rock star in the first
Yeah.
book department, you know? And we've had
Yes.
people come on that, like, we had a woman just the other day, Claire, that said she sold 2,000 copies. I mean, you would think a first-time author that sells 2,000 copies, like presses would be clamoring to get that next book. They're not. So it doesn't even,
Yeah.
I don't even understand what they're going for. I think most people don't understand. I don't even think people in the industry, like running these presses, even understand. I think it's all just like kind of throwing shit at a wall. But I don't know. I mean, that's just what it is. So something can be on a New York Times bestseller list, and that's editorialized. So it could be, oh, it's a New York Times bestseller. It's sold less than 500 copies, but it's
Yeah.
editorialized to be on that list, or, the publisher pays for it to be on that list. There's all kinds of placement that you can do with this. And this is where having an agent helps, blah, blah, blah. I know everybody wants to get into Harper's, everybody wants to get into Granta, the New Yorker. You're not getting in there without agent placement. There's 80
Yeah.
pages in this magazine every month or whatever, 120 pages, and everybody wants in it. You and, every fucking
Hmm.
writer on the planet who has a bigger reputation than you, a better, agent is wants to be in there. So you're competing with George Saunders if you want to get in the pages of the New Yorker. Okay. And guess what? He has a better
Yeah.
agent and they're going to put him in there over you. Okay. Because they're bidding for this spot. So if you don't have an agent, you can't even dream of getting in these magazines. The days of just haphazardly sending a poem or a piece of fiction to the New Yorker and getting in and your career takes off, those are over. That has been over for like 20 years at this point. Like it's just
Yeah.
doesn't happen anymore. The pages are too coveted and there's too many writers that want in on it. So they sell off the space. I mean, why wouldn't you bid off the space in that case? Makes you money. Not that they're even paying for placement, but I'm sure they are. So, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's just rough. It's rough out there. So,
Yeah. I mean, I had told myself and friends and family if I sold 100 copies, I think I'd be
right,
happy.
right.
And I checked my sales before I actually started PR and I had 50
Okay,
pre-sales without doing any marketing. I had done
right.
no PR, nothing, and I had 50 sales. I haven't checked it recently, so I don't know how many I'm at, but I'm like, if I've got 50, I think I can reach my 100 goal and probably be happy.
Yeah, I think you could. I think that's nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah.
100 copies, I mean, that puts you in the same realm. That's why we're so fascinated about it on this podcast, because that puts you in the same category as everybody else that has a first-time book on a major press, having all the marketing that the press is giving them. You're in the same boat then. If you're selling around that many for the first book, I mean, what
Yeah.
else can you ask for? I mean, and then the next one, hopefully you get a little more, and then the next one after that, hopefully a little, it's a slow build. You have to, I say it all the time about podcasting. I mean, stuff like that. I mean, it is one person at a time. You are building an audience one person at a time, and nobody knows who you are.
Yes.
Nobody cares who you are. Okay. Like you have to make them know and make them care. And it's one person at a time. So, you get a new
Yeah.
subscriber or something to a podcast or whatever, like, paid subscriber even, which is better. And then like, okay, that person, how long did it take me to earn that one person that like wants to likes this enough to want to follow it and support it? Uh,
Yeah.
a while, right? It takes a while. So it's just, and then hopefully it snowballs eventually, but you never know. It's just a hustle.
Yep.
All right. We like to know what else. We like to know, are you reading anything good, watching anything good, listening to anything good? What's filling your head right now? And this can be anything. This can be reality TV. This can be high-minded literary novels. This can be, what's filling your head? What are you enjoying? Either music, movies, TV, novels, poetry.
So currently at the moment, I've been super excited for this, but there has been a new season of High Potential on Hulu that has come out. It's like a crime detective show. I first saw shorts of it and I was like, oh my God, this looks cool. And then I watched it and I was like, second season, and that's coming out currently now every Wednesday. So I have been obsessing over that series.
What is that? I've never even heard of it. What?
So it's originally from a French spinoff, but it is about a cleaning lady called Morgan Guillory has something called high I think it's high potential intellectual. Essentially they're really smart and they have a really high IQ and remember things and she calls herself weird, but
It's
ends
the
up
it's the female Goodwill Hunting. Is this what it
yeah.
is? A janitor that is doing complex math problems on the most prestigious.
Yeah.
college in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, but she's cleaning the LAPD and sees a case and like notes that they did something wrong, sees something out of order and goes to fix it, and then all of a sudden she's been hired as a consultant for the LAPD and is now going with them to solve cases.
Right. Oh, so it's kind of like The Mentalist a little bit with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. God, that's what I mean. Like, there's so much content. There's stuff that I mean, you can be completely siloed off. I like the prestige stuff. I like prestige drama. I like the HBO
Yeah.
shows. I keep up with it. Even despite my life having a lot of, I don't have as much time for it as I used to. But I like it. I like because that's where the serious writing is in TV and movies. It's in the
Yeah.
prestige pieces, in like, Mad Men. I've started watching The Americans, and that show ended a while ago. But like that's great, great writing in it. Some better, some episodes better than others, but like great drama building, great craft to it, great acting. Kerry Russell is so great in that. All that kind of stuff is just, yeah, I mean, that's where it is.
Mhm.
So interesting. Yeah. Any music or anything? Are you a music person? Or are you just like,
Uh, I mean, I listen to songs on shuffle. I can't give you the exact names because I hit YouTube and I go playlist.
it's
Just shuffle it.
very Gen Z? Yeah, very Gen Z. That's what they say. Yeah. That it's all just
It
sing,
it'll
it's
either be
about
a
songs. Yeah.
shuffle. It'll either be a shuffle or I will listen to the same song for the next 6 hours in just
Yeah.
that song.
I love that too. Yeah. Getting a song that's you're obsessed with enough that you're willing to listen to on repeat.
Oh
I
yeah.
love that. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that I mean that's what they say is I mean the industry that is another creative art industry that is changing due to social media, doing due to like you said all of this stuff being everywhere all the time. You
Yeah.
24/7 entertainment, you can be bombarded with options. So why would people want to do something like read a book or listen to a whole album all the way through? I like, I grew up listening to a lot of punk rock. I like NoFX and stuff. And Fat Mike, who had a record label called Fat Wreck for a long time and put out a lot of great bands on it, he said he's transitioning now to do a new label where he's just doing singles for bands, not doing full albums anymore. They're just doing
Hmm.
songs and releasing them digitally, not even as like physical albums anymore. And I thought,
Interesting.
that's where it's going. It's going towards just single songs. It doesn't matter about the artist or the album or anything. It's about the song. Is the song good? Blah, blah, blah. So it's interesting how that's shifting, which means that you're getting less money per play because now they're not buying an album or listening to a whole album. They're listening to just the single song. So you're getting less per play, all of that stuff. I mean, all the
Yeah.
arts industries are being destroyed by the changes in technology, economics, all of that stuff. It's a lot of stuff out of the arts control, but also, they could be doing more. I always say they could be doing more to like make art more relevant, especially literature
Yeah.
and things. They could be doing more, and they're not. Final question, Heather, we like to ask is what are you working on now? So this is a series. Are you working on the next book in this series?
Yes. So originally I had planned this to be a trilogy, and it was unfortunately written in the back of the first book that this was going to be a trilogy. And I'm now kicking myself because I started writing the second book and I reached chapter 45 out of 51, and I was at 80,000 words. And I was like, this is too long. It's way too long for a second book. I have to split it up. I can't keep it at 100, 120,000 words. It's just not reasonable. So I have technically finished the first draft of the now second book and almost finished with the first draft of the third book.
Okay. Are you going to keep it a trilogy?
No, it's now a four
Right.
book series.
Okay. Yeah, and maybe
Because
even
there,
five or six, right? We'll
yeah,
see.
because there was enough content in that second, what was originally the second book to be two separate books.
Yeah. I say let it go. I say let it
Yeah.
go, Heather. Write as many books as it takes. Who cares that you put that in the back of the first book?
Yeah.
Just, well, we changed my mind. That's all. That's the only answer you need as a writer. This is
I had
why
too
you
many
made it more.
ideas.
Yeah, exactly. I changed my mind. That's all that anybody presses you. That's all you need to say. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't care. The story needed it, so I did more than three books. Who
Yeah.
care? Oh, sorry, you got 5, 6 books out of this. Oh, what a shame. Like, yeah, yeah, go
Yeah.
for it. All right, Heather, that was all I had. This has been fantastic. Thank you for coming on. Handles, we need handles. Social media, websites. Where do you want people to go to find your stuff?
Um, so my Instagram is Writer Central 24. Facebook is the same, and then I have a website, theliesbefair.com, where I've got occasional blog posts. I've also got a character profiles, so you can actually see the characters and the visualization of them that I upload occasionally, especially on new characters who might or might not be important to the story.
Right. Well, that's fantastic. And that's all linked below as well. Listeners, go click on it, buy a copy. It supports Heather. It supports this podcast, especially if you buy it through the links below. Um, well, Heather, this has been fantastic. Please come back.
Yes, absolutely. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, of course. So when that next book comes out, I have a dumb rule on this podcast, but I like it where when you come on for the first time as an author, I like to give an interview like this where we talk about your life, your work, all the writing techniques. And then the next time I like to do, we go into like a book that we like or that you like, together. Maybe I've been trying to figure out a way to do Harry Potter on this podcast. And of course, there's no shortage of enthusiasts. I don't know. I'm thinking of things like that or anything like that. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, please come back anytime. We'll do a book talk or we'll do an interview again or whatever. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Heavy.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy.
Bored.
I may say that the male is entirely hostile. No!
Resources.
Life with friends is boring. We must not say so. Are you radioactive now?
Inner.
Resources. American resources.
Being bored?
Some activities are intentional, right?
It shows such a lack
Heavy.
of gratitude for life. Bored. I aspire to boredom, I
Heavy.
should say.
Bored. Heavy.
I am heavy.
Bored.
Has you the night sweats and the day sweats, pal? Pal, I do.
if you're hearing this, it's because you are listening to the free public feed of Heavy Board. To get complete, uncensored, uninterrupted, full access to this podcast, become a subscriber at patreon.com/heavyboard. That's right, Heavy Board is made possible by subscribers like you. For less than 1 cup of coffee per month, you will receive private access to uncensored, full-length episodes, Jerk Shop, heavy bonus content, subscribers-only AMA episodes, bonus extended interviews, and more. Come join the conversation today at patreon.com/heavyboard.